So Kirk, you have a new book out, As You Grow, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the book is actually at the center of a lot of headlines right now. You are at the center of a lot of headlines. You basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brave Books, the publisher, you guys reached out to numerous libraries, over 50 libraries around the country, because you wanted to go and read the book and share the book with the community. And nobody got back to you, or they said no. Is that accurate?
Well, it's important to frame this, that we reached out to many libraries around the country with my book, which is about biblical wisdom and teaching children how to grow the fruit of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. You would think that public libraries would be thrilled for a book that would teach these virtues to children. And we were denied by over 50 woke libraries that have hosted drag queen story hours. And one of them was in Scarsdale, if I think I'm pronouncing that right. Yep. And they said that they were not willing to let me come read my book, although they were hosting a gender name change clinic the next day. Wow. And there were others. I'm sorry, that was not Scarsdale. That was in Indiana. My mistake. But in Scarsdale and others in Rochambeau, Rhode Island, and some others, it was things like our messaging does not align. We're queer friendly. So you can fill out a form and reserve some space, but we're not going to run your program at our library, which is shocking because you would think that that's what libraries are for, facilities for people to read their books, and story hours are for children. So why would a library committed to diversity and inclusion exclude me from reading my book?
It's interesting that some of them gave you reasons for it. You know, that a reason would be, oh, this doesn't align with our values. These are not, as far as I understand, most of them are not private institutions. They're publicly funded.
No, these are public libraries.
Right. So the values should be community values, I would assume, right? Not just like, oh, the values of the librarians in those locations. Or am I crazy?
I don't think that sounds crazy. I think that the public libraries are government funded by the people who live within those communities, and that the values of the community members ought to be valued, and they ought to be shared with their children. Now, I don't know what kind of parents bring their children to drag queen story hours, but I certainly know that there are many, many families who would love to have their children learn how to grow the fruit of kindness, of gentleness, of faithfulness, and self-control. In fact, the book that I wrote, As You Grow, doesn't contain the word God or the Bible or a Bible verse itself. It's simply teaching these virtues that are universally valued. In fact, I think that drag queens would love my book if they just took the time to read it.
Well, it's interesting. What do you think? Well, first of all, when you guys when Brave Books reached out, when you guys reached out to the libraries, were you anticipating this might be the response, or did you think, oh, I'm going to get some libraries where I can go and share this book?
Well, we wanted everybody to be able to read the book. Obviously, we just wrote the book, we published the book, and there's a lot of time and effort goes into that. And so we wanted people to know about it. And we thought we wanted our book to particularly go into those public libraries where children were being exposed to toxic ideas, and be able to offset that, and to be able to not just complain about these things as we see them in the news, but to make news by being on the offense with books that champion the kind of values that we want our kids to see. And it's very disheartening to see that those public libraries are they're hindering access for children to good and godly values.
I reached out to a couple of the libraries. Scarsdale gave me a no comment on the story. They weren't going to comment on it because we were covering it at CBN and Faithwire. And, I expected that. But you have, as far as I understand, you have reached back out to a few of these libraries and written a letter to them. What are you hoping to see happen from here?
That's right. We wrote a letter. Brave Books Publishing and I wrote a letter to some of these libraries, And we're hoping that they'll reconsider. We're sending them a free copy of the book. It's theirs to keep, to share with their patrons. We hope that if they read it, they'll see that these are the kinds of values that we all treasure for our children. And we hope that they will reconsider. And if they double down on their discrimination and excluding certain viewpoints just because they think that they don't like them, well, then I told them that I'm prepared to assert my constitutional rights in court. It's not okay to say yes to drag queen story hours and teach children one kind of values and say no to other community members who would like to have their children taught other values in the same library, in the same room, for the same amount of time as other people are allowed. That's called viewpoint discrimination and violating equal access and free speech.
And those are things right now in this country. These are big issues. You and I have talked a lot about this in the past on other fronts. Right now, you're front and center on this. You're no stranger to obviously making headlines and being in the media, the career you've had and what you do. What has this been like, this process? I mean, there have been a lot of headlines about this, a lot of opinions. It's pretty much been an endless story for you. What has that been like?
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to be a good father. I'm trying to raise my kids. I'm trying to be a good husband and a good citizen of the United States. And our forefathers and foremothers warned us. They told us the way to go, the things that are important, and chief among those are faith in God and in his word, and morality. George Washington said those are the two indispensable supports of the country. Our chief justices of our Supreme Court said that these are the paramount things. Noah Webster, who gave us the Webster's Dictionary, was also the father of American education, said the most important thing you could ever teach your children are the virtues of Christianity, because it's the only foundation upon which a free republic like ours can stand. So I'm just trying to do those things. I'm not trying to make headlines. Others are making headlines by hiding behind the word tolerance when they appear to be actually advancing totalitarianism. It seems as though the banner of coexistence is really a cloak for conquest of values and ideas they don't like. And so this kind of doublespeak needs to be exposed, but more importantly, it needs to be defeated. Because when Christians just complain about stuff, as I said the other night on Fox, many Christians get told, no, you can't do that. We don't like you. We don't like your values. And so they tuck their tail between their legs. They go home, cry in their Chick-fil-A soup, and wait for the rapture. That's a terrible idea. The Pilgrims, St. Patrick, John Knox, the apostles, the disciples would be rolling over in their graves if they saw Christians with that kind of jellyfish backbone. What we need to be doing is using the tools, the biblically based tools that we have in our Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, and push back on this kind of tyranny. And even more importantly, we need to get back to the Word of God, and we need to be teaching these children at our kitchen table, not sending them to libraries where male dancers in women's clothing twerk for children, hoping to get them to donate money in their brassieres.
Well, it's interesting to me that, the argument so often is, well, if parents don't want to bring their kids to a drag queen story hour, then they won't. The program can be there and they can make that decision. If that's the argument someone's going to make, and I'm not saying I agree with that argument, it's interesting that when you have the opportunity to have somebody like you go and read a Bible-based book, that the same argument wouldn't at the least stand.
Yeah.
That if people want to go see you and they want to hear you read the book, they're going to go. And if they don't, they're not going to go, right? So it's intriguing to me.
Yeah, well, it's terrifying to me because I see what it is. It's actually just a slippery slope. And, I feel like sometimes we're thick-headed and we're in a bit of intellectual fog as people within the community of faith, because these are tactics of war. These are tactics that, again, are a pretense of tolerance, which is really just a transitional step toward totalitarianism. First, First, these ideas are accepted. Give us a seat at the table, but then they own the table and poison everybody else at the table that they don't like. and now you're the bad guy. Look, there's a woman in Finland right now, a member of parliament, who's facing 2 years in prison for printing a pamphlet that quotes the Bible. And she rightly points out, if you're going to ban my pamphlet, I think she said men can't be lesbians. I think that's what she said.
Well, she actually,
men cannot be lesbians.
Pavi Razanen, I believe her name is. She also tweeted. Part of it is a tweet she sent quoting Romans. That was part of her case. Yeah, we've had her on. It's a really remarkable story.
The important thing to note is that she said, if you're going to ban my pamphlet, you must also ban the Bible. She doesn't want the Bible banned, but she's saying you must ban the Bible also because they have the same message. And that's exactly right. And that's what will happen here. The idea is first ban Christians and people who say things that they don't like. So you take the woke mob and you say, well, we don't like what Candace Cameron said, or we don't like what pick your conservative or your Christian. We don't like what they said. That's disrespectful. That's hurtful. That's hateful. And then they find out, oh, well, where do they get these ideas and these words? Well, they're going to start quoting Bible verses. Well, now we need to get the Bible out. And ultimately, that's the kingpin of Western civilization. The Bible is the book that Western civilization was built upon. Without it, you don't have ideas like religious freedom. You don't have economic freedom, political freedom, educational freedom, freedom of speech. You don't have any of that stuff. So these progressive agendas are actually not taking us forward. They're taking us backward. They'd be more appropriately titled regressive ideas. We're regressing back to paganism prior to the gospel coming and creating Western civilization. But Christians have got to wake up, get some courage and backbone. And I see that happening. I see the regime crumbling. I travel across the country and I see citizens who are concerned, full of faith and morality, who are rising up, standing up and speaking up at school board meetings and in their churches and running for office. This is encouraging. Billy, I see parents and grandparents and even librarians reacting to this story about my book, As You Grow, and they are calling us and emailing us saying, we want your book and we want to start our own story hour in our town at our public library. And that's my call to action. Moms, dads, grandparents, grab your favorite children's storybook. It could be my book. It could be any book that you want. The Chronicles of Narnia. Go get your favorite Sunday school storybook. Call the library that had the Drag Queen Story Hour and say, I'd like to read my book in one of your time slots. I'll pay the fee, same way you did for everybody else. And if they say no, they're likely breaking the law, violating the Constitution, and you can contact us. And we will show you how to host your own Brave Story Hour and how to get legal support if you need it. Just go to bravebooks.com and we've got it all laid out for you right there.
Well, it's bravebooks.com to get your book As You Grow as well. Kirk, appreciate your time and looking forward to following this story with you.